Assalamu alaikum. This is Halima from Oraan. Today we have Farrukh, who is a VP of Finance and Operations at Oraan. And before that, he has had an extensive experience in the banking and the financial industry. We're here to talk about financial pressures on men in households in Pakistan. Thank you so much, Farrukh, for coming on this podcast. Very excited to hear about your story. How are you feeling today?
I'm pretty good. I think this is a good opportunity to share, instances and my experiences, both in terms of my work life and also in terms of my family life. और ये ensure करना कि we're never short in terms of financial resources.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite exciting.
Thank you so much. And I think this is the topic that we want to touch, right? कि जब हम हमारे हाउसहोल्ड्स में जो हमारे डायनामिक्स होते हैं हमेशा largely जो प्रेशर होता है वो आदमी पर होता है.
Yep.
And even when you like thinking about getting married or like even in the current like households before getting married, your father is usually the chief wage earner and mother is the homemaker. और जब शादी करने की बात आती है तो होता है कि अच्छा आदमी के लिए हमेशा क्वेश्चन होता है कि कितना कमाता है.
True.
So what is your take and what are there any incidences in your life where you were like, you know what, this is so wrong and this is so like controversial to an extent कि इस तरह नहीं होना चाहिए.
When I was growing up, my father used to work from 8 in the morning till midnight and used to get 3 days off in a year. Right? My mother was a housewife, me plus 2 siblings, younger siblings. So we rarely, at least I rarely got to see my father because he used to work so much. And then he was the sole breadwinner. And then, it was my grandparents, my dad's younger brother used to live with us. So certainly grew up in that household. Where it was different was, my father's insistence to make sure that all of us got good education, including my sister. आजकल के environment में जहाँ हर चीज़ महंगी हो रही है, right? So even the basic necessities, आपकी education, आपकी health care, food that you are able to bring to the table, some basic form of entertainment, all of that now requires a lot more money than even a couple of years back. Right? So the capacity and the capability of women in the house to be able to contribute to the overall budget of the family, that requires preparation a generation in advance.
But going back to that point of that pressure that comes onto men in this society, especially, right? How have you faced that in your life?
Quite a number of times, because I studied for a profession that required a certain period of time where I had to work and study in parallel. I think that in itself creates pressure in terms of trying to make sure that you're able to complete your education as fast as possible to be able to get into the industry and start earning.
Yeah.
And that's one. Second, in terms of the ability to spend, right? Even now, when you're when you go out, right? Even if your spouse is earning, right? सोसाइटी के अंदर एक एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि अगर साथ खाना खा रहे हैं या किसी भी चीज़ के लिए जा रहे हैं या कोई चीज़ शॉपिंग के लिए जा रहे हैं फॉर एग्जांपल मर्द पे करेगा. Right? And this is quite common, right? And it's an expectation that kind of carries from generation to generation, right? I got divorced in 2013, right? And financially, it was a very difficult period for me, right? And I had 2 kids at that time. I have 2 sons, right? So the ability to absorb that and to face that pressure कि अगर मैं एक सिंगल फादर हूँ, राइट, और मुझे अपने बच्चों की फ़ीस और उनकी हेल्थ के लिए कंट्रीब्यूट करना है, आई नीड टू मेक श्योर दैट माई एम्प्लॉयमेंट कंटिन्यूज.
Yeah.
अगर मुझे इस वर्क प्लेस पे मज़ा नहीं आ रहा या मैं वो काम नहीं कर रहा जो शायद मैं बेहतर कर सकता हूँ, इट रियली डजेंट मैटर.
Choice नहीं है.
कोई चॉइस नहीं है, क्योंकि मुझे अनलेस आई एम एबल टू फाइंड अ बेटर जॉब, आई हैव टू टेक द environment that I am in by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
Right? So that's on the employment side. Even if you look at people who um, earn daily wages, for example, right? The way our media portrays the image of a man going out every morning, coming back every evening with a certain amount of money to be able to support the family, that is a message that to this day continues across our media.
100%. Yeah.
Right? So your news media, your entertainment, your TV, your social media, all of that kind of multiplies the effect. अगर लड़की के लिए सेव करना है तो उसकी शादी के लिए सेव करना है, जिसके लिए बाप कंट्रीब्यूट करेगा. ठीक है. लड़के के लिए सेव करना है, उसकी एजुकेशन के लिए सेव करना है, तो आई डोंट अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई देयर इज अ डिफरेंस, बट दैट्स हाउ द इमेज इज पोर्ट्रेड. उसके लिए भी बाप ही सेव करेगा. तो बाप ना सिर्फ घर के खर्चे चलाने के लिए काम कर रहा है, बल्कि फ्यूचर की सारी प्लानिंग और उसके लिए सारी कंट्रीब्यूशन भी वही कर रहा है.
And then they're not left with a choice to spend on themselves.
I know for a fact that when growing up, we would tell my father, my siblings and I would tell my father कि यार कुछ खरीद लो नया. He'd be like, नहीं, मुझे कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. Right? Even though we could tell कि ज़रूरत है, लेकिन अपने ऊपर स्पेंड नहीं करना.
Absolutely.
Right? ट्रैवल करना है तो नहीं, मैं ठीक हूँ, मुझे ज़रूरत नहीं है. छुट्टी लेनी है कहीं या किसी एंटरटेनमेंट के लिए जाना, नहीं, तुम लोग चले जाओ, मैं ठीक हूँ.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking about like these experiences with your father, like there's a lot of similarities from my household as well. My father was always somebody who was always working to be able to provide us with the kind of lifestyle that he wanted for his children. And I think that that when we talk about like household and household dynamics and money coming into the household, we often forget the anxiety that the structure has put and the pressure that has been put on men to provide for the household. So on that note, like how are you, given that you have two boys, what are you teaching the kids around money, and how are they building the relationship around money?
So they know, how much their father earns, for example, right? They can see the sort of effort that goes in earning that money, right? What they can also see is how much is spent on giving them the lifestyle that they have, right? So from education to health to entertainment, so that sense of responsibility, at least for the early part, needs to be taught. Right? अगर आप बच्चे को सिखाएंगे नहीं या बच्चे के साथ आप इंफॉर्मेशन शेयर नहीं करेंगे, उसको नहीं पता चलेगा, वो नहीं सीख पाएगा. And then if that responsibility is taught and they're given enough information, their minds start processing, right? So they kind of start building that image कि अच्छा यार, अगर बाहर जाते हैं खाना खाने के लिए, उसकी एक कॉस्ट है, right? तो बेहतर ये है कि आप जब आपको बाहर जाना हो वो कम हो, right? घर में आप खाना खाएं, right? अगर आपको कोई चीज़ लेनी है तो आप उसके लिए इंतज़ार करें, right? Delayed gratification. You can't, even if you have money, that doesn't mean you go out there and buy something that you want immediately. Right? So those sort of things, I think parents have a lot of responsibility in terms of teaching the children, and regardless of whether it comes from the father or it comes from the mother.
Yeah.
The fact that the message is delivered, I think that will matter a lot.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that, and like that's how I think I learned my early stages of understanding money and understanding money management, and also like the struggles when there is that anxiety
Yeah,
between a couple, when
yeah,
financial anxiety between a couple, the child starts perceiving it, right?
absolutely,
They start
absolutely.
understanding कि क्यों ये problems हो रही हैं और मैं किस तरीके से contribute कर सकता हूँ, and that sense of wanting that freedom and wanting that independence then gets built in so that you are an equal contributor into the household. On that front, like when you talk about the current inflationary situation in Pakistan, how is that affecting you as a father, you as a husband, and you as a contributor to the household?
The current inflationary pressures are affecting the general population, right? Now, there are two ways to look at it. One, you start identifying what is a need and what is a want,
Yeah.
right? And because things were better just a year back, that distinction, you were not forced to make that distinction. Uh, so that is one area that people are now starting to think, what can be let go of, right? Although that is not true for the general population. I think this country struggles in terms of a large section of the society not having the luxury to even think about wants.
Yeah.
Right? They're
Yeah,
restricted
absolutely.
to how can they fulfill their needs, and not just their own, but also their dependents. Right? So more mouths to feed, and as a consequence, there is little or small part per person available to fulfill those needs. Right? So, in terms of our society, the middle income part, there is a major risk of people slipping towards the lower income bracket as opposed to
Having that
progressing to
upward
the
mobility, yeah.
having that upward mobility. So that is a concern. Um, Education and health continue to get expensive,
Yeah.
right? Uh, so I think if you have a stable job or a stable means of income, I think now is the time to buckle down and say, look, no changes, uh, no extraordinary expenses. Try to hold on to liquid cash as much as you can to ensure that if, God forbid, there is an emergency, you're able to actually pay for it.
Yeah.
I think men generally struggle in terms of communication in
Communication,
our society,
100%.
right?
वो
अगर
एक्सपेक्टेशन भी नहीं होती कि प्रॉब्लम कोई
कोई शेयर
फादर
करेगा,
या
राइट?
हस्बैंड शेयर
तो वो
करेगा.
वो अंदर ही अंदर घुटता रहता
या.
है, राइट? बच्चा अगर कोई चीज़ मांगने आता है और फादर को पता है कि वो एक लग्जरी है, इसकी
Yeah.
नीड नहीं है, लेकिन बच्चे को खुश करने के लिए वो उसको हाँ कह देता है.
Yeah.
पीछे से वो उसको किसी और जगह से पैसे अरेंज करने पड़े, वो उसको अपने ऊपर एज अ
इतना,
प्रॉब्लम ट्रीट
yeah.
करता है और अंदर ही अंदर वो चीज़ उसको खा रही होती है.
Yeah.
Men in our society, because they are not used to opening up,
Yeah.
communication becomes a challenge.
Right. And it's not used to, it's also not expected of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a challenge, and it just adds to the anxiety and problems within the
Yeah.
household as well.
So I think even if you have I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old in my house, right? And they're both equally perceptive and equally understanding.
Yeah.
What has happened over their life is that they've had parents who are willing to talk to them,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and that ability to talk, and not just with your children, with your spouse,
Yeah.
right? If you're living in a joint family with your parents who are
Yeah.
dependent on you,
Yeah.
or your siblings who are dependent on you, and in a lot of cases single siblings do live in that joint household,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? अगर ये चीज़ आप कम्युनिकेट कर सकते हैं और उनको इनकरेज कर सकते हैं कि यार स्टार्ट कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटिंग, right?
Whatever capacity.
Whatever capacity you
Yeah.
can, whatever amount you can. I think that, and I don't think there should be any shame in terms of going out there and trying to look for employment.
Yeah, or being vulnerable and asking for help, right?
Absolutely.
Like help as
Absolutely.
the main chief wage earner,
Yeah.
to say that I cannot possibly manage my finances in the current income that I have and I need help. And those kinds of conversations are not something that are encouraged or happen in the current structures that we live in.
Society, I think,
Yeah.
also, weddings, for example,
Yeah.
right? Why is there an expectation to spend, crazy money on
Yeah.
weddings?
Yeah.
And I think smart people during COVID found a way to actually have weddings without having to
100%.
spend.
100%.
And why can't we do that in normal life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So those sort of things.
Yeah. This has been a really great conversation. Some really, really difficult points that we touched upon. And I think that's the purpose of
Yeah,
this podcast as
absolutely.
well, to talk about these really hard conversations and put out a perspective that is not from a different perspective of the person who probably feels this kind of anxiety and this kind of pressure from the society. Thank you so much for coming on this
Welcome.
podcast.
This was great.
And if you guys enjoyed this conversation as well, please send us your comments, and if you would like to see this kind of topic being touched upon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.